President Biden said yesterday that his comment referring to Chinese President Xi as a dictator will have no real consequence.
China disagrees, condemning Biden's remark and calling them utterly absurd, at least initially. Biden's dictator comment was made at a fundraiser the day after Secretary of State Antony Blinken concluded his visit to Beijing. That visit was attempting to repair relations between the two nations.
CBS News chief foreign affairs correspondent and Face the Nation moderator Margaret Brennan joins us now. And Margaret, you are just back from covering Secretary Blinken's trip to Beijing. It was the first visit by a U.S. Secretary of State to China in 5 years. If one of the goals was to inject some stability into that relationship, how might President Biden's comments have affected that?
Well, the White House insists no effect at all, that they are continuing to move ahead in talks with Beijing about planning for more high-level cabinet meetings. The Treasury Secretary is soon expected to visit Beijing. I would watch that space carefully to see whether that trip still happens as one of the indicators for just how seriously Beijing might be taking this behind closed doors. Now, we know, besides that public comment that Lana read, that Beijing did summon the U.S. ambassador to China formally for a diplomatic dressing down in Beijing. That's Nick Burns, the U.S. ambassador there. So this is public and privately being protested by Beijing. Look, the bottom line here is that, and I can tell you from having flown in with Secretary Blinken and been on that trip, every single moment was carefully orchestrated and carefully choreographed to try to minimize the risk of the kind of blow up that has happened even in front of cameras before for the Biden administration with top Chinese officials. And then this past February, when the Secretary of State had a very tough meeting with Wang Yi, the top foreign policy official in Beijing. So while I was in transit coming back, seeing that the President of the United States had said this, it was initially, I think, shocking to most of the people covering this trip. But in high stakes issues like this, you don't typically speak that frankly in public about your adversary when you're trying to lower the tension. Whether that affects the relationship, this isn't about a friendship. This is simply about managing the degree of conflict there is between the U.S. and China at this point.
And on that point, it was historic. 5 years since an official had been there at that level. And it wasn't without criticism. Former National Security Advisor and Ambassador to the United Nations, John Bolton, was extremely critical of the trip. I want to play a little bit of what he said.
Well, I think there was a lot less to Blinken's visit than met the eye. I think it accomplished its main objectives. And I think, in a sense, when you go begging to talk to a foreign government, particularly one as authoritarian as China, that it gives the wrong impression that we are the ones who are needy. We're the ones who need the conversation.
Begging is the word that sticks out to me, Margaret, from those comments. I'm wondering what your sources in the Biden administration have to say.
Well, they'd certainly object to the term begging. There was definitely a back and forth for some time with Beijing, and it was up to Beijing to say yes to the high-level visit. Most of the back and forth here was about whether the Secretary of State would go first or whether the Treasury Secretary would. And Beijing's top priority is the economic part of this. They would rather have that conversation about the financial ties between the two largest economies in the world than a tough conversation about human rights and visas for journalists and, opening military communications between the two countries. This is about sort of issues of mutual interest and not about being friends, as I said. But I did put the question to the U.S. ambassador to China, Nick Burns, about, whether perhaps the critics who said the secretary looked too deferential to Xi Jinping had a point. Take a listen.
And I think what Secretary Blinken tried to do here, and I think he was successful in doing it, is to take a relationship that had become too unstable and try to open up communications channels at the cabinet level, stabilize it a little bit. We'll be in a very competitive relationship for a long time to come. And so we've got to acquire these habits of communication that will help to deal with any kind of negative development in the future.
And I think what the ambassador's reflecting there is that the mindset has changed. The Biden administration and the Trump administration directionally are in the same place when it comes to China. They are simply getting more and more in direct competition on so many different fronts. And the Biden administration would tell you they have dropped the pretense that China would change its behavior on human rights or anything else by welcoming it into the global system, into these international organizations. No longer is that expected. Now it's about being able to get what the U.S. needs and manage the degree of fallout. That's where we are. And I think it was interesting to be able to be on the ground. I'm sure as fellow journalists, you can appreciate that that makes a difference when you can look people face to face and have conversations with them. That's what the diplomats would argue here, is just getting back to a basic level of being able to pick up the phone and talk to each other is where they want to take it, not much further.
That is so interesting.
It's so interesting and so eye-opening, Margaret, to hear you say that, because for a long time that had been the thinking, right, is that there would be a sort of pressure that China would want to actually be a part of the larger global community, and that would, in a sense, work to the United States' advantage. But it sounds like we really are at this inflection point now. It's been a busy week in Washington and beyond, Margaret. What else can we expect on Face the Nation this weekend?
Well, we'll certainly talk about this. I have some further reporting for Face the Nation to share, but we will have a conversation with Mike Turner. He's the Republican chair of the House Intelligence Committee. We do expect a report from the intelligence community on their view on COVID's origins. Yet another irritant in this very complicated relationship with China. And we'll bring you much more reporting, including an important conversation with Cindy McCain, who is a top UN official. And she talks to us about areas of the world suffering tremendously right now because of a hunger crisis. And she calls on Beijing and other powers to help fight that with more funding. The U.S. gave $7.2 billion last year to the fight against hunger. China, the world's second largest economy, gave $11 million with an M. So that shows the interest in engaging with the international community China has given through its own channels in different ways.
Well, you know, we will certainly be watching Face the Nation. And Margaret, I have to say, it was wonderful seeing you out there in Beijing.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Oh, thank you. We were lucky to get that visa. I didn't know until the day before I got on that plane whether the Chinese government would grant it. And it's always good to be on the ground to report.
Absolutely. And for all of our viewers, a reminder that you can watch Margaret's great reporting and Face the Nation right here on CBS News. It streams at 1:30 p.m., 4 p.m., and 10 p.m. Eastern every Sunday.